The moment that set daytime television buzzing didn't begin with shouting or dramatic music, but with a tense silence that settled over the table on The View. Valerie Bertinelli, usually calm and composed, appeared visibly uncomfortable as a discussion about culture and personal accountability took a sharper turn. Viewers could sense something was off as her body language shifted, her smile faded, and the easy rhythm she normally shared with the panel slowly unraveled in real time. The conversation started as a routine segment, touching on a controversial social topic that had already divided public opinion. Joy Behar, known for her blunt humor and strong viewpoints, leaned into her argument with confidence. Valerie initially responded thoughtfully, offering a more personal and empathetic perspective. While neither woman raised her voice at first, the contrast in tone quickly became clear, setting the stage for a clash that felt increasingly unavoidable. As the exchange continued, Joy doubled down, interrupting Valerie mid-sentence more than once. The interruptions, subtle at first, began to stack up, creating visible frustration. Valerie tried to finish her point, gesturing lightly with her hands, but each attempt seemed to be cut short. For longtime viewers, this dynamic was uncomfortable, as Valerie is rarely seen fighting for space at the table. What made the moment resonate was Valerie's emotional investment. She wasn't speaking in abstract political terms but drawing from personal experiences, referencing lessons learned through hardship and public scrutiny. Her voice wavered slightly, not from anger but from feeling unheard. The audience could sense that this wasn't just another debate segment, but something that struck close to home for her. Joy, however, appeared unmoved. She responded with her trademark sarcasm, brushing aside Valerie's points with a quick remark that drew nervous laughter from the studio. While humor is often Joy's shield, this time it seemed to widen the gap rather than ease the tension. Valerie's expression hardened, her eyes briefly dropping to the table as if weighing whether to continue. Co-hosts attempted to redirect the discussion, chiming in with neutral comments meant to cool things down. For a moment, it seemed like the show might regain its balance, but the damage had already been done. Valerie's responses became shorter, more clipped, signaling her growing discomfort. The warmth she usually brings to the panel had all but vanished. The turning point came when Joy dismissed Valerie's argument with a comment that many viewers later described as condescending. Valerie paused, took a breath, and looked directly at Joy. The silence that followed felt heavy, stretching longer than typical live TV pauses. It was the kind of quiet that makes an audience lean closer, sensing something significant is about to happen. Valerie calmly but firmly stated that she felt talked over and disrespected. Her words weren't explosive, but they were honest. She emphasized that differing opinions shouldn't mean dismissing someone's lived experience. This direct call-out shifted the energy instantly. Joy appeared surprised, momentarily at a loss for words, an uncommon sight for the veteran host. Instead of backing down, Joy responded defensively, insisting that debate was part of the show's nature. Her tone sharpened, and the exchange teetered on the edge of turning openly hostile. Valerie's shoulders tensed, and she glanced off camera, a subtle sign that she was reaching her limit. Viewers at home could almost feel her internal struggle. Then came the moment that sparked headlines. Valerie pushed her chair back slightly, her microphone still live, and said she needed a break. Without dramatic flair, she stood up from the table. Gasps rippled through the audience as cameras scrambled to adjust. It wasn't a storming off in anger, but a quiet, decisive exit that spoke volumes. As Valerie walked off set, the remaining hosts sat in stunned silence for a beat. Joy attempted a half-hearted joke to fill the void, but it fell flat. The show quickly cut to a commercial break, leaving viewers processing what they had just witnessed. Social media lit up instantly, with clips and reactions spreading faster than producers could respond. During the break, speculation ran wild. Was this a permanent walk-off or just a cooling-off moment? Fans of Valerie expressed support, praising her for setting boundaries in a space that often rewards the loudest voice. Others debated whether live television inherently invites confrontation, questioning if the situation had been mishandled by everyone involved. When the show returned, Valerie was notably absent. A brief statement acknowledged her stepping away from the table, framing it as a moment to regroup. The tone was careful, almost cautious, suggesting producers were aware of the gravity of what had occurred. Joy remained on set, noticeably more restrained for the rest of the segment. Off-camera reports later suggested emotions were running high backstage. Valerie, according to sources, needed time to compose herself after feeling repeatedly dismissed. There were no shouting matches behind the scenes, just quiet conversations and producers trying to de-escalate. This detail only reinforced the idea that Valerie's exit wasn't impulsive, but a necessary pause. The incident reignited long-standing discussions about dynamics on panel shows. Who gets heard, who gets interrupted, and how often are emotional responses labeled as overreactions. Valerie's walk-off became a symbol for many viewers who have felt talked over in professional spaces, especially when trying to share personal truths. Joy, for her part, later addressed the moment in a more reflective tone. While not issuing a full apology, she acknowledged that conversations can get heated and that live TV leaves little room for nuance. Her comments were measured, suggesting some awareness that the exchange had crossed an invisible line. Valerie's silence in the immediate aftermath only added to the intrigue. Fans waited for her response, analyzing her past interviews for clues about how she handles conflict. When she finally spoke, she emphasized self-respect and mental health, carefully avoiding direct accusations while standing firm in her decision to step away. She explained that sometimes the bravest choice isn't winning an argument, but recognizing when a conversation is no longer productive. Her words resonated deeply, reframing the narrative from controversy to self-care. This perspective shifted public opinion, with many praising her maturity and emotional intelligence. The show itself faced renewed scrutiny. Critics questioned whether the format encourages confrontation at the expense of empathy. Supporters argued that passionate debate is the core of the View's identity. Valerie's walk-off sat at the center of this debate, a real-world example of the tension between authenticity and entertainment. Ratings analysts even weighed in, noting a spike in viewership following the incident. Controversy, as always, drew attention. But there was an underlying question of cost. How much emotional labor should hosts be expected to endure for the sake of compelling television? For Valerie, the moment marked a turning point in how audiences perceived her. No longer just the agreeable presence at the table, she emerged as someone willing to assert boundaries publicly. This shift added depth to her on-screen persona, earning her a new level of respect from viewers who value emotional honesty. The relationships between Valerie and Joy remained professional, though visibly altered. Subsequent episodes showed more cautious interactions, with fewer interruptions and a noticeably softer tone. Whether this change was organic or producer-driven, it signaled that the walk-off had made an impact. Fans dissected every interaction that followed, searching for tension or reconciliation. Some hoped for a heartfelt on-air conversation to close the chapter, while others felt the quiet adjustment spoke louder than any apology segment could. The absence of dramatics allowed the issue to settle without being exploited. In the broader media landscape, the incident joined a growing list of live TV moments that expose the human side of broadcasting. Scripts and rundowns can't account for emotions, history, and personal triggers. Valerie's exit served as a reminder that even seasoned professionals have limits. That discussion also highlighted generational differences in communication styles. Joy's rapid-fire debating contrasted sharply with Valerie's more reflective approach. Neither is inherently wrong, but the clash illustrated how mismatched styles can escalate tension when not carefully moderated. Producers reportedly revisited internal guidelines after the incident, emphasizing respectful dialogue and equal speaking time. While panel shows thrive on differing opinions, this moment demonstrated the importance of structure in preventing conversations from becoming personal battles. Valerie's fans continued to rally around her, flooding her social media with messages of support. Many shared their own stories of walking away from situations where they felt disrespected, turning her on-air decision into a relatable, almost empowering moment. Over time, the initial shock faded, but the lesson lingered. The clip remained widely shared, not for shouting or insults, but for the quiet power of choosing to leave. In a media culture obsessed with escalation, restraint became the most talked about act. The clash with Joy Behar may have started as just another heated exchange, but it evolved into a broader conversation about voice, respect, and self-worth. Valerie Bertinelli's walk-off transformed a tense moment into a statement that extended far beyond the studio. In the end, what viewers witnessed wasn't simply conflict, but a human response to feeling unheard. Whether one sides with Valerie, Joy, or neither, the incident underscored a truth of live television: behind every opinion is a person, and sometimes stepping away speaks louder than staying and fighting. As days passed, media analysts continued to revisit the moment frame by frame, noting how subtle cues often reveal more than words. Valerie's tightened posture, her measured pauses, and her deliberate choice to stand up rather than argue back all pointed to a conscious decision. This wasn't about winning airtime or scoring points, but about reclaiming control in a situation that felt emotionally overwhelming. Viewers who had followed Valerie's career for decades connected the incident to her public journey of self-growth. From navigating fame at a young age to openly discussing body image and personal loss, she has often spoken about learning to protect her peace. The walk-off seemed like a living example of those lessons put into action. Industry insiders quietly praised the restraint shown by producers after the incident. Instead of replaying the clip repeatedly on the show itself, they allowed the conversation to unfold organically online. This approach prevented the moment from becoming a spectacle and instead let it mature into a meaningful discussion about workplace respect. Joy Behar's longtime supporters argued that her role has always been to challenge, provoke, and push conversations forward. They pointed out that fiery debates are part of what keeps the show relevant. Still, even some fans admitted that the exchange felt different, lacking the mutual give and take that usually balances such moments. The incident also sparked conversations among fellow television hosts across networks. Several spoke anonymously about how often disagreements are encouraged behind the scenes to boost engagement. Valerie's decision to step away disrupted that expectation, reminding audiences that authenticity can't always be scheduled or managed. Psychologists and communication experts weighed in, explaining how repeated interruptions can trigger a fight-or-flight response. Valerie's calm exit, they noted, was a classic example of choosing flight not out of weakness, but as a self-regulating strategy to prevent emotional escalation. For many viewers, especially women, the moment struck a deeply personal chord. Social media filled with comments from people who saw themselves in Valerie's experience, recalling meetings, conversations, and relationships where they felt minimized. Her quiet stand became a shared emotional release. Over the following weeks, Valerie returned to the table with a noticeably steadier presence. While she didn't address the incident directly on air, her confidence was evident. She spoke when she felt compelled and remained silent when she didn't, signaling a shift in how she engaged with the format. Joy, too, adjusted her approach, allowing more space before interjecting. Whether intentional or subconscious, the change suggested a mutual understanding had been reached. The tension that once hovered between them slowly softened into a cautious professionalism. Media historians later grouped the moment alongside other iconic live TV exits, not for its drama, but for its dignity. Unlike explosive walk-offs fueled by anger, Valerie's was defined by composure, making it stand out in an era dominated by outrage-driven content. The conversation eventually moved beyond the individuals involved, prompting networks to re-examine how they moderate panel discussions. Balance, it seemed, wasn't just about equal airtime, but about recognizing emotional boundaries and respecting different communication styles. Valerie's choice also influenced how fans perceived conflict resolution. Instead of applauding the sharpest comeback, many praised the wisdom of disengaging. It subtly challenged the idea that strength must always be loud or confrontational. As new controversies emerged and headlines shifted, the walk-off remained a reference point. Commentators cited it whenever discussions about civility and mental health in media resurfaced, proving that its impact extended far beyond a single broadcast. For Valerie Bertinelli, the moment became less about Joy Behar and more about personal integrity. She demonstrated that even in highly public spaces, it's possible to honor oneself without tearing others down, a message that resonated long after the cameras stopped rolling. Ultimately, the incident reminded audiences that live television is a mirror of real life, complete with missteps and moments of clarity. Valerie's quiet exit didn't end a debate, it reframed it. leaving viewers with the powerful takeaway about respect, boundaries, and the courage to walk away when necessary. In interviews that followed weeks later, Valerie hinted that the experience changed how she prepares emotionally for live discussions. She spoke about grounding herself before tapings, reminding herself that her value isn't measured by how much she speaks, but by the truth she carries. That mindset, she suggested, helped her return with clarity rather than resentment. Audiences began noticing subtle production changes as well. Moderators stepped in more quickly when conversations overlapped, and the pacing of debates slowed slightly. These small adjustments suggested that the walk-off had sparked internal reflection, even if it was never formally acknowledged on air. Entertainment journalists noted how rare it is for a moment like this to feel both dramatic and restrained. There were no insults exchanged, no voices raised to a breaking point. Yet the emotional weight lingered longer than many explosive confrontations, precisely because it felt authentic and unresolved. Valerie's supporters continued to frame the incident as a lesson in emotional literacy. They praised her for recognizing her limits and choosing self-respect over performative resilience. In a culture that often rewards endurance at any cost, her decision challenged deeply ingrained expectations. Joy Behar, meanwhile, remained a complex figure in the aftermath. Known for decades of sharp wit and fearless commentary, she embodied a different broadcasting era. The clash highlighted how evolving cultural norms are reshaping what audiences expect from televised debate. Younger viewers, in particular, responded strongly to Valerie's actions. Many described it as refreshing to see someone disengage without apology. For them, it modeled a healthier response to conflict than the endless cycle of arguing for dominance. The moment also sparked discussions about power dynamics at the table. Experience, seniority, and personality all play roles in who commands attention. Valerie's walk-off briefly disrupted that hierarchy, forcing both viewers and producers to reconsider how influence operates on screen. As time passed, the incident became less about blame and more about balance. Commentators shifted focus toward how differing communication styles can coexist without collision. Valerie's reflective tone and Joy's confrontational humor represented two valid approaches that simply needed better mediation. Fans who revisited older episodes noticed how often Valerie had previously yielded space to keep conversations smooth. The walk-off reframed those moments, casting them not as passivity, but as patience. When that patience ran out, the contrast was striking. The cultural ripple extended beyond television. Workplace coaches and leadership speakers referenced the clip when discussing boundaries and respectful dialogue. Valerie's choice became a case study in choosing dignity over escalation. Despite the controversy, Valerie never allowed the moment to define her role. She continued engaging thoughtfully, laughing when appropriate, and contributing meaningfully. Her refusal to dramatize the incident further reinforced the calm strength that initially drew support. Joy, too, maintained her presence without softening her core identity. The subtle shifts in interaction showed that growth doesn't always require reinvention, just awareness. Their coexistence after the clash became a quiet example of professional adaptation. Over time, the audience's memory of the walk-off evolved. What once felt shocking became symbolic. It represented a turning point where emotional well-being briefly outweighed the demand for spectacle on live television. The enduring power of the moment lay in its simplicity. One person felt unheard, named that feeling, and chose to step away. There were no villains, only humans navigating a high-pressure environment under constant scrutiny. In the broader story of daytime television, Valerie Bertinelli's walk-off will be remembered not for the argument itself, but for what followed. It reminded viewers that sometimes the strongest statement isn't made with words, but with the courage to stand up, walk away, and protect one's sense of self. As the months passed, the walk-off continued to be a reference point in discussions about the evolving nature of talk shows. Networks began considering new formats that emphasized more measured dialogues rather than sensationalist exchanges. While the traditional debate-style format has its place, Valerie's departure served as a reminder that sometimes, silence can speak louder than shouting. Many social media users created memes and posts centered around the walk-off, framing Valerie as a symbol of personal strength. Her decision to leave a tense situation without drama became a viral moment of empowerment. For many, It was a lesson in how to reclaim your peace in any environment, no matter the stakes. Within the entertainment industry, some producers privately expressed admiration for Valerie's decision, acknowledging that her exit created an essential conversation about mental health. Producers began discussing ways to incorporate more emotional sensitivity into high-stakes live shows. While these conversations remained behind closed doors, there was a growing sense that the landscape was shifting. In interviews following the incident, Valerie spoke about how her perspective on public conflict had evolved. She admitted that, in earlier years, she might have stayed in the conversation longer or tried to win the argument, but she now valued her mental and emotional health more, and sometimes walking away was the most empowering choice. Interestingly, the walk-off also influenced how some of the younger panelists on The View handled their own on-air disagreements. They appeared more aware of the emotional toll that public confrontations could have, and there was a noticeable shift in how they navigated more heated moments. Valerie's decision to step away became an unspoken lesson in emotional self-preservation. In the months that followed, The View hosted a series of guests who discussed mental health, emotional boundaries, and navigating conflict in a professional setting. These discussions were likely influenced by the walk-off and reflected a broader trend toward more emotionally intelligent television content. It was clear that the show was taking steps to reframe how conversations unfolded. As part of this shift, the show also made adjustments to its production style. Topics that were traditionally framed as polarizing were now introduced with a more empathetic approach. The hosts were encouraged to listen more actively, with producers even introducing new time limits for responses to ensure each voice had space. Some viewers, however, felt that the incident had been blown out of proportion. For them, it was just another television moment that didn't need to be dissected so deeply. They argued that Valerie's decision to leave wasn't a grand statement but rather a personal reaction to an uncomfortable situation. Yet, even these voices couldn't deny that the event had sparked important conversations about the nature of live television. For the fans who stood by Valerie, the walk-off represented a stand against a culture that often prioritizes conflict over civility. It was a declaration that strong opinions didn't need to be voiced at the expense of one's peace of mind. Her actions became a form of protest against the idea that to succeed in media, one must constantly argue for dominance. Over time, the media's narrative around The View softened. The tension from the walk-off subsided, and the show's portrayal became more balanced. Valerie returned as a trusted voice, but her walk-off incident remained a marker of her boundary as one that added a layer of complexity to her public persona. Joy Behar, ever the experienced broadcaster, seemed to quietly adjust in her approach to discussions. While still as sharp as ever, there was a noticeable effort to give her co-hosts more space, particularly in moments when emotions ran high. Some viewers interpreted this as a sign of growth on her part, acknowledging that both she and Valerie had contributed to the new tone of the show. Fans of the show who had once been loyal to the more confrontational style found themselves reevaluating what makes a good debate. The incident made them consider that a productive conversation isn't just about speaking louder, but about respecting the flow of dialogue and recognizing when it's time to pause. Even outside of The View, the walk-off found its way into broader conversations about professional environments. Career coaches and mentors began using it as a case study, advising their clients on the importance of setting boundaries in high-stress, high-visibility situations. Valerie's choice to remove herself from the conversation became an example of choosing self-respect over fleeting victories. The ripple effect of Valerie's walk-off even reached educational spaces, where professors in media studies began using it as an example of how emotional labor impacts professionals in broadcast environments. Students were encouraged to consider the psychological costs of participating in public debates and how their own boundaries might be challenged. Valerie's decision also sparked a wave of fan-driven content aimed at celebrating her strength. Some posted video essays analyzing her journey from being a beloved sitcom star to an outspoken advocate for mental health. Others created fan art depicting her walking away from the table, framing her exit as a heroic moment in television history. By the time the next season of The View began, the environment had shifted slightly. The debates were still robust, But there was a new layer of mindfulness in the way conversations unfolded. There was a stronger emphasis on empathy, active listening, and acknowledging that everyone at the table brought valuable perspectives, even if those perspectives sometimes clashed. Valerie's walk-off might have been a brief moment in the history of daytime television, but its impact was far-reaching. It wasn't just about the single argument, it was about how we, as a society, engage in difficult conversations. Her choice to walk away was a reminder that the most powerful words can often be the ones left unspoken. The incident also prompted viewers to reflect on their own conflict resolution strategies. Many shared their experiences of choosing to walk away from toxic conversations or environments, feeling empowered by Valerie's example. It sparked a broader cultural conversation about the value of emotional intelligence and the importance of knowing when to disengage. The walk-off had an enduring cultural impact, transcending the boundaries of The View. It became a touchstone for anyone who felt undervalued in discussions, whether in the workplace, at home, or online. Valerie Bertinelli had unwittingly become the face of a movement that championed self-respect and emotional wellness. Ultimately, Valerie's walk-off wasn't just about a disagreement with Joy Behar, it was about the balance of power, respect, and emotional health in the media world. Her departure from the table became a symbol of quiet strength, reminding everyone that sometimes, stepping away is the bravest thing you can do. As time passed, the moment became less about the controversy and more about the precedent it set. Valerie Bertinelli had shown the world that it's possible to stay true to yourself while navigating public discourse. Her choice to leave the table was a declaration of self-worth that resonated far beyond the confines of The View set. The conversation sparked by Valerie's walk-off still lingers in the cultural consciousness. It's a reminder that how we communicate both in the media and in our personal lives shapes the environment we create for ourselves and others. Her stand, though brief, remains a powerful statement on the importance of respectful dialogue and emotional boundaries. As for The View, the incident was a turning point in the show's evolution. While it didn't fundamentally change the nature of the program, it added an important layer of introspection to the way the panelists interacted. It wasn't just about louder opinions, it was about finding common ground and respecting each other's perspectives, even in moments of disagreement. Looking back, Valerie's walk-off wasn't just a dramatic TV moment, it was a subtle shift in how we think about conversation, conflict, and respect. The incident became a metaphor for all of us who find ourselves navigating difficult conversations, whether on television, at work, or with the people we care about. In the end, Valerie Bertinelli's decision to leave wasn't just a personal statement. It was a cultural moment that reverberated across social media, news outlets, and public discourse. It reminded us that true strength lies not in dominating a conversation, but in knowing when to walk away and preserve your own well-being.